Is black on white crime really the problem that they say it is? I'm not sure. So I got into the data myself, and what I found might just surprise you. Hey, everybody, my name is Gray. Thank you for coming to my channel, Counsel Gray. If you like what you see here, I invite you to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Everyone is saying that black on white crime is so bad that Black people are inherently criminal, are animalistic, are preying on white people. So I'm not so sure. I wanted to get into the data myself because I'm going to tell you that my experience as a seasoned trial attorney does not comport with this idea that Black people are just going ham on white people. Yes, I see a lot of Black defendants. What I don't see is all of these white victims. So let's see. Okay, so there's this poster that's been circulating around and is by this guy, Jake Lang. Now, you may remember Jake Lang. He was one of the January 6th attackers. He calls himself a political prisoner. He served maybe about 3 years in jail until he was pardoned by President Trump. He came out of prison, possibly even more militant than he was when he went in there. Certainly a cleaned up version of when he went in, he looked like a kid. He came out looking like a man, but he looks like a man on a mission. So he puts out this chart a couple of months ago, weeks ago, I'm not even sure when it came out, but it's been circulating all over the place. The premise of this chart is that he ends up with the conclusion that black on white crime is 41 times more prevalent than white on black crime. He says specifically, adjusted for population size, Black people commit violent crime against white people at a rate of 41 times that of the reverse. Now, I got to be honest, like I said, this does not comport with my experience being in this business for the years that I have been in. Yes, there are a lot of Black defendants. Yes, there is an intractable underclass of Black people. But what I don't see is all of these white victims. Okay, where are the white victims? So this infographic is problematic. So what I did was I got the data set. I attempted to reconstruct this number and basically to see what I got. So if you look down in the very bottom right corner of his infographic, he tells where he got the data. And we're going to get into that in a minute. So I just want to tell you what I did. I actually acquired these data sets. I manually reviewed these data sets. I looked for anything that could possibly be interpreted in the way that to show this 41x. And then I fed the data set and his infographic into an AI model and asked it if there was any way to manipulate the numbers in that data set to yield these very specific numbers. TLDR, it also could not find how this chart was created. Okay. And the thing is that the chart and the reports that come from the government about the data, they're clear. They've already done all the analysis. So you don't have to configure or adjust any of the numbers. They already do that and give it to you. So what he did was a second level, if his source is true. And I'll tell you why the source is dubious. But if it's true, he didn't need to do any more adjusting to it. He wanted to get this effect, right? So this is highly problematic. Okay, so like I said, I got the data set, right? This is a screenshot. This is the data that he used, the 2018 National Crime Victims Survey. This is self-reported data, okay? This is people who are reflecting on what happened to them. This is not data that was actually reported to the police or prosecuted. Now, I wonder why he chose this data. We'll get into that in a minute because he had options, right? He could have chosen other data sets. But more importantly, I'm also wondering, why did he go back so far in the data, right? Why did he use 2018 data instead of 2022 data, which was available to him? And then we'll also get in a little bit later, we'll get into why he chose this self-reported data over actual reported, prosecuted, investigated data. Okay, so I also got the same set of data, a more recent version of the data that was available to him when he chose to use the other set of data. And here is a screenshot from my computer of that data. And again, I got into this data. I manually searched this data. I put this data through an AI model. And I also read the reports written by the people who compiled the data. Okay, so this is a video that you guys may have seen. Thank you to freedomnews.tv. This is a short clip of not an interview, but a conversation that you may have seen where this guy, Jake Lang, neither of these men is him. I'm going to play it in a minute. He's talking about how white people are so in danger that they're being preyed upon by black people. I think he calls black people degenerates.
I'm a member of that community. I'm a member of my community. My community is being victimized by the community of violent black.
But here's the problem.
But here's the problem. Degenerates.
When you stand up in the name of God, there's one body.
Amen.
And if you're not a part of that body,
I can read statistics. So I'm also a pragmatic human being. So I understand when there's a problem, it needs to be addressed head on. If you tiptoe around a problem, that's how you get to the end result.
So your biggest concern is the loss of white life by black people?
No, that's not my concern. I have concern.
The concern is a repeating pattern. It doesn't stop. It just keeps going on and on and on and on. And we just can't ignore it any longer. If it stops, we're good.
So let me answer that question. Do you believe more white people are killed by white people or by black people?
Listen, by strangers, it's 2 to 1. Every single race in domestic issues, because we live amongst each other and uncles kill uncles and drunk at barbecues and stuff like that, it's always the same amount.
So your response is this.
Let me respond, please. Please let me respond.
Is your response that Mr. Metcalf needs to get on your bus and tell people that his son was killed, but he's not you. So what I'm saying is,
I'm telling you, I'm somebody that stands for what I believe in, and I don't cower when it's time to stand.
If your desire
it's because of fear.
My desire is that another Austin Metcalf does not happen next week. And if I was his father, I would stand righteously to say, yes. But I'm a man.
We all have common sense.
So you're speaking for his father?
Hold on. We know.
No, I'm speaking for white men in this country.
Are you a father?
White people in this country.
Are you a father?
Hold on one second.
Are you a father?
Hold on one second.
Are you a father?
I'm not. But listen.
Okay, so when I talk to non-fathers who are not dealing with grief, you've talked for an hour. So if you want to address, I can give you after I give this message. The bottom line is this. You have a father that's out of respect asking you not to put his son's face in a place. How do you say you're going to represent people when you can't respect the will of the people?
No, let me respond, guys. There's too much peanut gallery.
That's not what his father said. His father did not say that.
Can we please let me respond?
So you believe
I'm having a conversation between you and I. Listen to this.
Yeah.
Austin Metcalf is no longer Austin Metcalf. He is a symbol. He is a symbol of young white people being predatorized and victimized every single day, living in fear. He is living in fear. Our people in this country are living in fear. Austin Metcalf is no longer.
Okay, so this guy is saying that young white people are being predatorized, I think was the word he used, and are living in fear. So let's look at how accurate this is. We've already established, I've already told you, I was not able to replicate his data. Not only was I not able to replicate his data using standard techniques to back your way into people's data when you have a closed universe of data, right? I was not able to do it. The AI model was also not able to do it. So let's look at some of the data that he's actually referring to. The source that he's referring to. Again, these numbers do not align. Now, the question is this guy stoking irrational fears, right? Is he playing up something that's not true? I'm going to say I think he is. This is these are posts from his Twitter account, okay? So there was one incident of a white girl in Chicago with her black boyfriend, and she gets stabbed and murdered by this black guy, right? Who to me looks homeless. I don't know. This guy, Jake Lang, the one that we just saw arguing, he posts it 23 times back to back on his Twitter feed. So when I see stuff like this, it just reminds me that he's basically just trying to stoke something. He's trying to take one thing and plaster his wall with it, right? Like it's happening all the time, right? We don't know anything about this story, but anyway, this is my question, right? Is he basically fear mongering? Is he trying to take a mole and turn it into a mountain? So let's see, okay? So it is impossible to recreate these numbers using the data set that he claims. And again, it was a 2018 NCVS, right? The National Crime Victim Survey. Again, this is self-reported. Okay, so I pulled that data set, right? I told you. And let's recreate the numbers from that data set, okay? So what you're looking at is 2018, which is the year he chose for whatever reason, and it shows violent incidents excluding simple assaults. Now, simple assaults every year account for anywhere between 60 to 2/3, right? 60 to 66% of violent crimes. So this is looking at this year without the simple assaults. In a minute, I'll show you the data with the simple assaults, okay? And I'm only using white, black, and Hispanic. There are some others, right? There are Pacific Islanders, there are Asians, there are Indians, there are Native Americans, right? Those small groups on the side are left off, which is why these rows don't all add up to 100, okay? So if you look at the three pink numbers, these are what are known as intra-racial crime, right? This is white on white, black on black, Hispanic on Hispanic, okay? Everyone knows, I think, everyone knows that you are most likely to be victimized by a perpetrator of your own race. That's these pink numbers, right? So what they mean is that where a white person is the victim, if you can see my cursor, where a white person is a victim, 68% of the time the offender is a white person. Now, these are violent crimes, right? So these are going to be your murders, your rapes, your robberies, your strong arms, carjacking could be in there, home invasions, right? These are things like that. These are not getting punched in the mouth. These are not street fights. These are not simple assault type of things, okay? So if you're white, 68% of the time, your offender, using the 2018 data, your offender is white. And if you're a black victim, basically 75% of the time, your offender is black. And if you're Hispanic, now this is interesting. If you're Hispanic, only 45% of the time is your offender Hispanic. So what that means is the Hispanics are the only ones who are more likely to be victimized by someone outside of their group than inside of their group. But even with that, of their attackers or of their offenders, Hispanics are still number one, right? They're still the highest, even though they're not the majority, okay? So everybody knows this. Now, I want to draw your attention to what he's talking about, the black on white crime. Black people, black offenders only commit 17.6% of the crimes against white people. So what that means is that if you're white, you are 4 times more likely to be attacked by another white person. So if he's talking about the fear that white people feel when they go about, when they're walking down the street, when they're in their homes, when they're in their churches, when they're in their cars, they should really be afraid of white people. Okay, now the guy in the argument, right, the black guy with the hat, he asked him this question, but notice that he didn't answer it. He talked about domestic something or other, right? And a lot of violent crimes are domestic in nature, but not all of them, right? Robberies, burglaries, home invasions, carjacking, these are not domestic incidents, okay? And those categories are the majority of violent crimes. Homicides, right, which tend to be often domestic, are nowhere near the majority of these crimes that we're talking about here. They are nowhere near the majority of violent crime, okay? So the domestic thing only accounts for generally homicide, maybe some domestic rape, okay? So these are violent crimes between people who are not known to each other for the most part. Okay, so if white people are afraid, it doesn't make sense that they're afraid of black people. It means they should be afraid of white people, but for some reason, they're not. I don't know why. Same goes for every group. If you're going to be afraid, you really should be most afraid of your own people. Okay, but here's the other thing, and this is interesting. All of the black numbers, right, the ones that are not pink, those are actually interracial, meaning one race does the crime to the other, right? Group A on group B. Now, if you look at the black numbers, the interracial numbers, I want to draw your attention to the center bottom box. White on Hispanic crime is actually the highest interracial crime category. What do these white people have against Hispanic people? That fully a quarter of violent crimes perpetrated against Hispanic people are perpetrated by white people? So if any group on this chart should be afraid of another group, it's Hispanic people should be afraid of white people. White people, why are you harming Hispanics? What do you have against the Hispanics? Listen, here's what I think. Hispanics, you need an HLM. You need a Hispanics Lives Matter. because these white people are harming you in very high rates. Notice that white on Hispanic crime is 9% higher than black on white crime. But I didn't hear Jake mention anything about that. I didn't hear him mention the white degenerates and animals and the violent white culture on these Hispanics. Now, listen, Hispanics, like I said, you need a Hispanic Lives Matter movement. You need to march. You need to protest. Because this, well, if you weren't so busy trying not to get deported by these same white degenerates, you would have time to march. This is crazy. Quarter of crime committed against Hispanic people is committed by white people. Nobody's talking about this. Hispanic people, you guys need, listen, I don't know what they have against you, but it's a lot higher than black on white. Okay, so I wrote a letter to white people on behalf of Hispanic people. It says, "Dear white people, Hispanic lives matter. Please stop all this interracial violence against us. Sincerely, HLM." All right, so now let's look at the same year, but let's include simple assaults. Okay, now, look at here. When you include simple assaults, black on white crime actually drops, black on black crime drops, white on white crime drops. But let's look at what goes up. White on black crime doubles. White on black crime doubles when you add in simple assaults. White on Hispanic crime also goes up. What are you guys doing? Slapping your cleaning lady? Punching your landscaper? Like, what explains that almost 30% of crime against Hispanics is done by white people? And why is nobody talking about this? Jake, if you ever happen to hear this, why aren't you talking about your degenerate brethren preying on Hispanic people? It makes no sense. And again, when you compare black on white versus white on white, sir, your daughter, your sister, your wife is 4 times more likely to be assaulted or violently harmed by you than by some random black guy in the street. By her white uncle, her white grandfather, her white, I don't know, neighbor. I don't know who's killing you guys. I mean, I don't know who you guys are killing each other. But it's not the black guy. 4 times more likely that it's this white guy. But he dismisses that as domestic, right? But it, I don't know. These simple assaults may actually include domestic. I don't know. But either way, you've got 4 times more of a chance of being assaulted by one of your own than by a black person. And you're twice as likely to assault a Hispanic than a black person is to assault you. Hispanic people, rise up. Okay, so why use the 2018 data instead of the 2022 data anyway when it was available to him? I don't know. Let's see. Let's see if there's a reason that he cherry-picked his data. All right. When we look at 2022, violent incidents, again, the pink ones are the intra-racial, okay? But now look, the white on black crime has shot up to 13. It has tripled when he uses the 2022 data over the 2018 data. It triples, right? Remember when it started out, it was 5. Now it's 13. I wonder why he left this out. But now look, the black offenders are 14% of offenders when the victim is white. Still 4 times more likely that your precious flower is going to be soiled or unalived by a white person. Still, the data holds so strong that you have to manipulate the data to say anything else. And look, even still, white on Hispanic violence is still the highest form of interracial violence. Why is that? What do these people have against Hispanics? Is that why you're trying to deport them all? I don't know. All right. So he had a choice of another set of data, right? He could have used actual reported, investigated, prosecuted crimes, but he didn't. He used self-reported data, as in like, if, to the best of your recollection, were you victimized in the last 6 months, right? Because this is 6 months at a time. Yeah, I think I was. I think right? There was a guy, I was in the dog park and he was trying to watch birds or something and he assaulted me, I think. I think he was black, right? Not only are they recollecting or attempting to recollect what happened to them, they're also attempting to recollect the race of the person. Now, I'm not going to say that some people are more likely to feel assaulted and harmed by others than other groups maybe, but we have this phenomenon called a Karen, right? Who always feels that they're being harmed or victimized in some way. So if you were to ask a Karen, were you assaulted? Yes, I was. I was assaulted by a big black man. I know he was black. You guys don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I would really appreciate it if you enjoy what you're seeing here. All right. So here's the answer, right? I'm hypothesizing, but here's the answer. Because when they use actual reported police records, the intra-racial numbers go up. Meaning that for some reason, when the crime is reported, it's more likely that the victim was of your race. But when 6 months later, you're asked to recollect about this assault that happened that you, for whatever reason, did not report, you remember the perpetrator as being of a different race. Okay. This data shows, right? Remember when we were looking at the self-reported data, the intra-racial crime rates were in about, I think we saw 55 to 75%. In the reported data, intra-racial for white people jumps to 70 to 80%. And for black people, it jumps to 85 to 90%. This does not fit Jake Lang's narrative. This does not fit the narrative of people who try to manipulate and weaponize crime statistics. Okay? By using a different set of less reliable data, he can shave the intra-racial white-on-white crime down to between 55 and 67% versus 70 to 80%. That's why he chose the other data. And it says for Hispanic and Asians, it follows similar patterns. Okay, so let's get into what causes crime, right? Race does not cause crime. Poverty causes crime, disinvestment causes crime, inequality causes crime. Now, I know that people who want to believe that black people are just so violent and animalistic and degenerates and dindus and all, right, all these things. They don't believe this, okay? But let's look at what the data says. All right. This is using 2019 data, and I'm going to walk you through this because I know that this chart is a little bit dense, okay? It says that black offenders are 29% of homicide offenders, but they are 53.7% of that's a difference of almost 25%. Who's killing all these black people? Who's killing all these black people? I don't know. All right. White people are 27% of total offenders and 41.6% of total victims. Who's killing the white people? Who knows? And then there are these people of other unknown races that we can't keep track of, that we don't know. But here's the thing. If you look at the absolute numbers, 4,700 black murderers, 7,500 dead black people. That's a difference of almost 3,000. The difference between the amount of chaos that white people cause and the amount of people that are killed who are white is only 1,200 people. So they are not being disproportionately killed. There's only 1,200 white deaths that are not accounted for by white people. But when you look at black people, there's almost 3,000 black deaths that are not accounted for by black people. Somebody else is killing them. I'm just saying. I don't know who it is. But also, let's look at this thing below. Victim offender race combinations. White victim, white offender, 3,300 cases. White victim, black offender, This is homicide, you guys. Remember, the other numbers we were looking at were violent crimes generally. This is homicide. White victim, black offender, 566 cases. Again, you are 6 times, I had to calculate that. You are 6 times more likely, if you are white, to be killed by another white person. So what are you so afraid of? You're 6 times more likely to be killed by a white person. So when you talk about, right, and this has nothing to do with per capita anything. When you walk down the street, when you come home, ladies, when you are pregnant, when you're in your car at a stop sign, who is most likely to kill you? If there's 2 guys walking down the street, a black guy and a white guy, and you're a white person, the white guy is 4 times more likely to kill you, not the black guy. It makes no sense. And I'm going to show you in a minute why it is, even further, that the crime that black people do barely even affects white people. So we're going to get into that in a minute. Now, same thing goes with when the victim is black, right? Much more likely to be killed by another black person than by a white person. Okay, so across all races, crime happens where the people are, and that is just due to density and poverty. If you put people together in closed, tight spaces, they will commit more of all kinds of crimes against each other. Then if you move out and people have space to breathe, less crime is likely to happen. And this is also data, the same type of data from the 21-22 data. If you look on the far left side, it says urban, suburban, and rural. You can see clearly here, and this is crimes per 1,000 people. If you're in urban, that number's higher. Rural, it's lower. And that's because proximity to other people, I don't know if it makes people angry, people get irritable, I don't know what it is. But being tightly packed with other people tends to create more crime, and this is across races. When you put a bunch of white people in tight spaces, they are more likely to kill each other than if they are spread out in the suburbs or in urban areas or rural areas. Okay. The other thing, and I'm going to pull this all together in a minute. So not only do we know that crime is more likely to happen in cities across all races because people are tightly packed, but black people are more likely to live in white majority areas than white people are to live in majority black areas, right? And anybody who lives in the hood, you kind of know that if there's that one white family that's still in the hood, right? White flight happened 30 years ago, but this one white family is still there. There's an issue. Mental health, alcoholism, who knows what it is. White people do not live in majority black neighborhoods, period. That's what white flight is. You never hear of black flight, okay? All right. So proximity drives exposure, not intent, right? So I want to explain what you're looking at on this chart right here. This is a chart of 4 types of places where you can live. Super urban, right, which is the inner city, urban, suburban, and rural. And this is a distribution of where the people are, okay? And the argument is, and not even the argument, but the data, right? Black on black crime, black on white crime, white on black crime, and white on white crime, all 4 of them increase in cities. Does white on black crime increase in cities? Absolutely. Absolutely it does, and I'm going to explain why, okay? So the idea is in any setting, each of these rows is a different setting. If a person from either group wanted to commit a crime and they randomly reached into a bag that represented the population and there were a bunch of marbles in there, if they randomly pulled out one marble, these would be the chances that it would be a white or a black marble, okay? In the inner city, if someone is living in the inner city and wants to commit a crime, and they reach into this bag and only black people and other ethnic minorities are in the inner city, who is their victim going to be? Their victim is going to be black, right? So this is that urban, inner city, gang violence, right? This is what's causing the 75% black on black crime. It's this intractable underclass that exists in inner cities. If they decide to go outside and randomly commit a crime, and those crimes are not often random, right? They are against other people who are living that same lifestyle with them. Do they catch bystanders? Absolutely. But these are also not generally random crimes, okay? If you were to reach into that setting and decide to do a random crime, there's almost a guarantee that your victim is going to be a brown person or a black person. White people are not getting killed in inner cities. They're not there. If you go to urban areas where there are a lot of people, you've got black people there and you've got a lot of white people living in urban centers. If either of these two groups, if a perpetrator from either group reached into a bucket to pull out a victim, statistically speaking, it's more probable that the marble they pull out is going to be white because there are more white people there. Now, this is what it was talking about when I said that if a black perpetrator is in proximity to lots of white people, if he goes outside and randomly decides to commit a crime, statistically, it's more probable that a white marble is going to come out at these ratios. But here's the thing, it's also statistically more likely that if a white person reached into this particular urban bucket, that they too are going to pull out a white marble because there are more white marbles in that bucket. Same thing when you go down to suburban. If a black person reaches in and decides, I want to create a random crime today, and they reach in, there's more white marbles to pull out. Same thing, if one of these white people wants to commit a crime, and they reach in, they're more likely to pull out a white marble. That's just it, because there are more white marbles in the bucket. Same thing goes for rural. And this is where you see white people killing each other, right? Remember the data set that this guy used? 67% of crimes against white people were done by white people. That's because when white people reach into the bucket randomly, they're going to pull out a white marble. This is proximity, right? This is not intent. This is not black people setting out to rob white people. This is, if you want to do, in the inner city, that top row, this is black people killing each other, right? This is that intractable, gang-infested problem. I'm not denying that. No one can deny that. But they are not killing white people because they are not in proximity with white people. But when you move down, no matter who the perpetrator is, it's more likely that the victim is going to be white because there are more white people. Okay, so this is just what I was talking about earlier, how simple assault is about 2/3. This top row is simple assault. It's about 60 to 70% of all crime. Okay, so let me talk about this here. So do white people in cities commit more white on black crime than whites in suburbs and rural areas? I just explained that. That is the case. There is just more opportunity to kill each other when you live in the same place, when you live separately, right? When black people live separately, they kill black people. When white people live separately, they kill white people, right? When groups are isolated, they kill themselves. When they mix, the chances that they're killing the other race increases. Okay, so are some crimes race specific? I can tell you from the practice that there are some crimes when you hear about them before you even meet the parties, you know this is a black person, you know this is a white person, you know this is an Asian person. So I would say yes, there are some crimes that are more likely to have been created by, and I'm not going to get into what they are because there's stereotypes. There's always going to be something that surprises you, but there are some crimes that black people do, some crimes that white people do, some crimes that Asian people do, right? So I would say yes. Okay, so let's look at this list. Violent crime, there's a higher black arrest rate in absolute numbers. We've just seen on the chart that there are less violent crimes committed by black people. Property crime, roughly the same, varies more by income and age. So this idea that black people are just stealing everything all the time, it's not that, it's poverty, right? If you're in affluent areas, people steal less to survive, right? They might do a heist, they might come for your emeralds, right? But they're not stealing. In poor areas, people steal to survive, people steal to have, materialism, whatever it is, but it's the same across races. Income is the determinant. White collar crime, much higher among white educated middle to upper class individuals, but it is rarely prosecuted. There's often a slap on the wrist. Often these types of crimes are dealt with inside of the company where they happened. They never even become public for PR reasons. And then drug use, This stuff is old hat. I think everybody who's really into crime statistics knows these things, that drug use is similar across races, but Black people are more arrested and prosecuted for it. This has been proven. This has been studied. Anybody who debates the data, don't do it in my comments, because this all of this data here is old hat. Okay, so finally, I'm going to end with this. How prevalent is white-on-white crime? It's very, very common. It's totally normal because of proximity. We talked about this. I showed how it's more common in um, places where there are lots of white people. Every other racial group has the same thing. They're harmed by the same people, and Bureau of Justice Statistics and the FBI crime data says that 80% of white homicide victims are killed by other white people. Now, remember, that number was a little bit lower using the data set that this guy chose, but he specifically chose that data set so he doesn't have to deal with this 80 to 90% number for reported crimes, okay? Now, here's the other thing. For assaults and robberies and rapes, the vast majority also happen within racial lines. So it is just not true. I don't know how many times I have to say this. I don't know how many times anybody who is serious about this data knows that when you're sitting at a red light, when you're walking down a dark alley after work, it doesn't matter per capita anything. You're literally 4 to 6 times more likely to be harmed by the white guy if you're white. This data, I mean, this for this guy to try to pretend like he doesn't know that. Okay, so, and like I said, this is old hat, right? Anybody who takes this data seriously can tell you this thing, right? And we saw how this guy took one instance of a white girl being killed by a Black guy, and I heard one commenter say that that's the worst Chicago Transit station in the whole city. Why she was even there? Maybe she was trying to score something. Who knows? I have no idea why she was there. But he took that one incident and posted it 23 times on his feed to try to do this fear mongering. This pretty blonde white girl, this scruffy dark looking Black guy who looks homeless. Okay, so this is why I did this, right? You guys know this is not my bag, so please like, share, and subscribe. This is not my bag. I'm just doing this on the side because I cannot listen to what I'm hearing and not chime in, okay? The danger of misinformation is that it incites violence. And here's the thing. People don't want to do their own thinking, so they are particularly susceptible to falsehoods of others, right? People don't want to download. I think I downloaded 80 something spreadsheets, right? I took a whole day trying to figure out where this guy got this fake data that he got. People don't want to do that, so they want to be told, right? People don't want to think. They want you to tell them what they should think, tell them what they should feel, tell them what's important. When you are telling a lie to people who don't want to take the step to verify it on their own, you are inciting violence. Like these mass shooters who are becoming radicalized by this fake data. And I'm going to be honest, and this kid, Jake Lang, he's a kid. He looks like an old man, but he is a kid. We have a duty to young people to not give them fear and hatred and angst and then tell them, go ahead, make a nice life with that, right? We have an obligation to young people to remind them that this is the greatest country in the world, that this is the safest country in the world. I don't know how true that is, but I mean, there's a lot of things you don't have to worry about in this country, right? We have to tell them why the American idea is the best idea in the world. How irresponsible is it to tell 14 and 15-year-olds and 10-year-olds that they should be afraid, that this country is not for them, that people are trying to take from them, that people are trying to harm them? This guy's a real POS. He really, like the more I even talk about this, the angrier I get. How dare this guy? And then you wonder why these young kids are shooting up schools. And then because they don't want to deal with that, they try to change it. It's no longer a mass shooting, right? We know what a school shooting is. We know what a mass shooting is. But in order to not have to deal with that, you're calling these gangland shootings mass shootings. We know what a mass shooting is. It's not the homies shooting each other up in Chicago. Don't get me started on this, all right? Perpetuating stereotypes, harmful racial biases, which lead to discriminatory policies, right? And then you wonder why you're so afraid of young black men who really are not even coming after you, who are going after each other. But what do they do if they can't get jobs? This is so ridiculous, right? This is what happens when you oppress a people for 400 years. When you oppress a people for 400 years, then you have to deal with the consequences. Then you live in fear that they will do to you what you did to them. In order to recruit soldiers in your army, you have to play with the data to get these little simps to follow you and believe what you believe because you're so scared. Anyway, the other problem is that it undermines trust in legitimate data sources and institutions, right? This is the anti-science that is pervading our society, right? You make people not trust data. You make people not trust science. You make people not trust mathematics. For what? So you can get your 10 minutes of fame? All right, that's enough for me. I'll have to pick this up another time because I'm already worked up. But listen, if you like what you see here, if you want to see more of it, let me know in the comments. Hit the like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that when I go live, you'll be the first person, and leave a comment. I am responding to all comments. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.